Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational ED podcast. Remember, Wednesday Wisdom is brought to you by K-12 Sports Tech, along with our other sponsors. Speaking of our sponsors, we're going to meet this week's Wednesday Wisdom guest. But first of all, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I've used as an athletic director. I trust them. They're great companies. You should use them too. So, take the next 3 minutes. Just listen to our shout outs, then listen to our interview, then go and visit each one of these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to K-12 Sports Tech for being the name sponsor for Wednesday Wisdom. K-12 Sports Tech helps athletic directors and sport vendors connect through education and hands-on consulting services. Athletic directors are also invited to join the K-12 Sports Tech AD think tank and help influence how companies shape their tech to better serve your programs. To get started, to find out more, all you have to do is go to k12sportstech.com. Tell them you heard about it on the podcast. That's k12sportstech.com. We also want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Do I need to say anything more? Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the sports, for all the events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. We want to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our kids loved the videos, parents loved the streaming, but there's so much more. Join the 8 million users. Make sure your school is a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio University, but my assistant athletic director did, and it was a tremendous experience. It's just 20 months, totally online, very affordable, and included in the master's curriculum are 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. For more information, go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. Get your master's in athletic administration from Ohio University. We'd like to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their scoreboards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com for more information. We'd like to say thank you to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, uploading scores and rosters, communication. How about athletic eligibility and clearance? Who doesn't do that every single day? Home Campus does all of these and so much more. And all you have to do to get started is talk to the folks at homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We'd like to thank our friends at Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school, tremendous success because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. It's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Gipper. You know, your students are on social media, and if they don't see content celebrating their accomplishments and promoting your program, you're really missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. They're going to show you how to create world-class content in seconds, and it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. And we'd like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but typically it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% that supports your program. And having that information, that data, is tremendously valuable, especially when you're sitting with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We are welcoming a brand new member to our Wednesday Wisdom team. She was on the podcast before, did a great job. Our guest today is Molly Moore. If you remember her episode, we connected as I was started following her on Twitter. She just had some great observations, many times humorous. Has a tremendous background as in the world of athletics. She was a college coach. She was a college athletic director. Now she is the director of donor relations at Oakland University. Also has a unique perspective as the mother of a high school and college athlete, and that's kind of what she's going to talk about today. But Molly Moore, welcome to the Wednesday Wisdom team.
Thanks, Jake. I'm glad to be back. Yeah, as you mentioned, we've had a kind of a whirlwind couple of days. In particular, we shipped our number 2 child off for his first year of college, and he's playing ball this year. He'll be a baseball player on campus, and so really, I'd love to share a little bit of our lessons learned through his journey, and that perspective, not only from a parent side of it, but also having been through the coaching and the athletic administration part of it. 2024, actually, everything from COVID, the COVID years, we call it, to now has been sort of a whirlwind in college athletics, with things changing substantially, and NCAA kind of moving on the fly and making a lot of changes relative to recruiting and so on and so forth. And so it's made that journey for families and student athletes and truthfully for coaches and athletic administrators even more challenging than it's been in the past. When we're talking about transfer portal changes and then you throw in a COVID year in there, and then the NIL changes and things like that. There's a lot that we don't know as parents, and I think we do a very good job on the whole of trying to guide our kids into making the right decisions for college based on academics and those kinds of interests. But for most of us, we kind of are starting from ground zero and don't really have a whole lot of idea of what happens with that athletic recruiting if our kids are interested in pursuing that path. So what I'd really like to share with our athletic directors and our coaches is they play a really big role in being able to help guide our families and student athletes so they're not sort of finding their way blindly through that process. And we've learned that over the course of the past couple of years. I made it my job because our school is small and we didn't really have a lot of resources, and there wasn't a lot of guidance for families in that regard. So personally, I made that my job the last few years to align myself with people who could be helpful and kind of direct us down that path. And through all of that, I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if our schools could be more proactive in helping people like me and my son as we kind of walked that path. And so I kind of took some mental notes and actually took some real notes as we went through it. What would be the things that would be really helpful for families and for our students? And those are some of the things that I would like to share today. And I'm very mindful of the fact, having been in the role and being very close to people who are in those roles now, I'm very mindful of the fact that athletic directors and coaches have a whole lot on their plate. Trust me, I get it. But what it comes down to truthfully, through the scheduling and dealing with officials and so on and so forth, is everything is about our student athletes and creating opportunities for them to succeed now and build a foundation for a successful future. And so I think if we sort of keep that at the forefront, then some of these activities might take on a higher priority because it's really part of the educational process of the whole student. So All of this to say, these are some of my ideas and thoughts about how our athletic directors and coaches can help our students. And the first thing is really understanding that most of our families and students are starting from ground zero with no background in how to do this. And so um, we really need to find out what are our interests of our students for starters, and knowing that not everyone wants to pursue a career in athletics beyond high school, but let's find the ones that want to, and then figure out what we can do as administrators and coaches to help them get there. And so my suggestion would be those early years, freshman, sophomore years, when those students are all playing JV sports, most of them playing JV sports, some of them freshmen, certainly some at the varsity level, but if you've got student athletes in JV sports, it's a perfect opportunity to work with your coaches and do some sort of an inventory with them, and ask the questions. What are your goals? What are your future aspirations relative to your, not only your academic life, but also your athletic life? Because then you know what student athletes are in need of your assistance and your guidance moving forward. The beginning of a school year, like now, is a great time to do those types of things, not just with your fall athletes, but let's get a handle on your winter and spring sport athletes as well too, because as you know, the recruiting calendar is a 12-month calendar. It doesn't start and stop with the high school season. And so now that we get everybody back on campus for school, let's figure out what's going on. Once we have an idea of what students have aspirations beyond high school, I think the first thing that I would remind them, because the journey can be daunting, and we saw it with our own son, it can be very stressful, is remind these students to be where their feet are, that it is a journey and their future success is certainly important, but more than anything, enjoy right now and where you are in your life right now, and enjoy the process. None of this should ever be a job. It should never be stressful. It by virtue of the beast, it can be. And so as the adults in our student athletes' lives, the coaches and the athletic directors, it's our job to remind them to be here right now and play for your teammates and with your teammates right now. Don't put too much pressure on yourself about the next step. Although also at the JV level, it's important to kind of take a look each year at the NCAA recruiting calendar and any particular changes that are now in place for the coming year. We've seen it this year in the NCAA with changes to the number of scholarships allowed in certain sports and contact periods and things like that. So always a good idea to kind of brush up on that and share things that might affect your student athletes. Let them know what those are. And then also I hear a lot from a lot of families, because I do, now that we've been through it, and folks know that I've kind of done my homework on it. I get a lot of people that will come and say, hey, what's the difference between Division I, Division II, Division III? And by the way, what's NAIA? And like, what's this JUCO thing? And so it's really important, I think, that our athletic administrators and coaches sit down with our athletes and explain the opportunities available at each of those institutions. And the key differences in terms of how the recruiting process or scholarships might work between those, because again, most people don't really know. But more than anything, from JV through their high school career, the best service that we can do for all of these students is remind them that their grades are first and foremost the most important thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing on the court and the field if you're not getting it done in the classroom. And particularly now, with a lot of the changes that have happened at the NCAA level, opportunities are a little bit tougher to come by. And so the big separator, in addition to being elite in your sport, is to be elite in the classroom. And so as athletic administrators and coaches, we need to remind our student athletes that that's what comes first, that grades are going to open the door as much, if not more, than a lot of things. And then all of these things, as our students work through their varsity careers, remain important and should be part of the dialogue annually. But that's also at the point where I think a lot of our student athletes can benefit from even more specific guidance from our athletic administrators and coaches in terms of how they communicate now with coaches at the college level. What might that look like? So if we can, let's look at providing email templates to these student athletes. What should an email look like to a college coach? Remind them you're not texting your best friend. Use proper grammar, use appropriate punctuation. Don't send blanket emails to 25 coaches. Again, think of it like, what would you like to receive as an athlete? Do you want to get a Dear Student Athlete letter, or do you want to get a Dear John Smith letter? So address each email to the coaches specifically, and talk about why you're interested in their program. Do your homework as a student athlete. These are the types of things that we can be helping them with. I would love to see our athletic administrators and our coaches offer guidance on how to use social media. Again, there's been a huge push since 2020 in particular, for coaches out looking at video and finding student athletes, particularly on Twitter. And, tools like Huddle provide opportunities for kids to share game film and things like that. So how are we sharing it? And it's important that they understand what their social media profiles look like, what sorts of information should be in there. So again, our coaches and our athletic administrators can help guide them to create an appropriate profile that's going to help them not only be seen, but also represent themselves in the best possible light. And then finally, the last thing that I think, particularly from a coaching perspective, we can help our student athletes with is develop skills videos. So in areas where, maybe Huddle tools like that aren't available to do these compilation highlight types of videos, what types of skills videos would coaches appreciate? What kind of content do we need to look at? And most importantly, let them know they don't need to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Everybody's got a phenomenal video and editing capability in the palm of their hand in their phone. So let's help guide them through how to do those types of things and create something that will help them be seen, and again, will represent themselves really well. So those are the ways that I think in particular we can be of the greatest benefit for our student athletes from a coaching and athletic administrative perspective.
Just great stuff. You probably saw me scribbling down notes. Coming from again, your background, college athletic, college coach, college athletic director, and then now going through this as a parent with your own, son. What were some things that, as you're going through this with your son, and again, you're not a professional college recruiter, but you certainly know your way around the block. What was something that really surprised you, maybe in a good way, as you were, going through this recruiting process for your son as a college student athlete?
The one thing that surprised me more than anything else are the number of coaches that reached out to him and said, I saw this, or I saw your video or whatever on Twitter. And it was insane, either to him or to me, that the first contact came through some sort of, something that they had seen on Twitter. And it really underscored to us very, very quickly how important the impression that you make on social media is, because again, not everybody has the benefit of having coaches that have the time or ability to really advocate for them and to help them communicate with college coaches too. So you have to advocate for yourself. And so again, it's about putting your best foot forward and getting your information out there, whether it's email or whatever. But truthfully, the impact of social media on the recruiting process completely blew me away. Because that there's eyes out there, but we had no idea how many eyes really were paying attention. And so that was a difference maker.
But that's good to hear. And I think you bring up a great point for coaches, for ADs that are listening. It's not your job as the coach or the AD to post the student athlete's video. It's their job, but you need to help them, just find those sites. And there's a ton of sites out there where students, student athletes can post their highlight tape and that sort of thing. You make me think of the opposite. And I know you don't fall into this category, but Did in your discussion with coaches, have you heard them say you see this posted, and I don't know if it's an urban legend or not, but did any coaches, bring up the idea of they stopped recruiting a kid not because of the kid's social media, but because of things they had heard or seen about that kid's parents? Did that ever come up?
Not, it's come up in conversations, not about a parent's social media, but about parent behavior. Absolutely. I've heard it a lot, and it's an unfortunate reality that, again, there's eyes everywhere, and you can even go to, when you're sitting at your kid's game, um, a lot of coaches will come in their branded apparel. A lot of coaches will not, and they don't want to be so, so obvious, so they kind of come a little bit more covertly. So again, there's eyes everywhere. And yes, so not necessarily relative to parent social media presence or anything like that, but certainly parent behavior at games, and otherwise when they've interacted with them or observed them, it does make a difference.
Right. Well, again, Molly, really appreciate you sharing with our listeners. And for our listeners, Molly has a full-time job. But if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain just a little bit on this process of how they might do a better job for their students in the area of recruiting, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
They can email me at work. It's mollymoore@oakland.edu.
Yeah. And we got to give your Twitter site a shout out. That's at Molly Mo, MO32 on Twitter. Some very cool stuff, sometimes some very funny stuff. Definitely someone that I follow on Twitter. Molly, all the best to your program at Oakland University. All the best to your son starting his college baseball career. And
Thank you.
thanks again for joining us as a member of the Wednesday Wisdom team.
Thanks. It's been fun.
For listeners, just remind you that we do this every single week, and we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. We hope you come back next Wednesday and just about every day for more content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Once again, check out Molly Moore on Twitter. That's Molly Mo, MO32, Molly Mo32 at Twitter. Before we go, we do want to thank all of our sponsors, especially K-12 Sports Tech. They're the named sponsor for Wednesday Wisdom, along with the rest of our sponsors. You know them, you should know them, you should be using them. We want to say thanks to Gipper. We want to thank Home Campus, Sideline Interactive. I want to say thanks to Huddle and Snap Raise. I'd like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame and Hometown Ticketing. I want to thank Athletic Surveys and Ohio University's Online Masters. Check all these great sponsors out. You're going to be glad you did. And thanks again for listening to the Educational AD Podcast.